The Dragon Lord's Consort. Epilogue. The Final Trial. Elianza settled down into the giant molten magma pit where all of yesterday's effort had slowly begun to melt away. The black-scaled dragoness felt relief as the magma burned away any dust or muck that had settled into her scales, quickly sizzling and burning away. With half of her charcoal-colored body submerged in lava, the dragoness took on a resting pose, letting her tail and her neck sink in with just her head lying on the outer rim of the bathing ridge.
"Did it bother you much?"
asked the voice of her lover. The advisor turned to see the scarlet dragoness approach her. Cynthia walked up close to her mate and lied down just next to their magma pool.
"You know it did,"
she answered uneasily.
"You saw the pain. You saw his anger, what we did. What I did to him. You did what you thought was an appropriate challenge. While Torchin Dirain's and yours were mental challenges, mine was the physical one. I think that is where it might have stemmed from."
She shook her head.
"I should have just stopped when Ember cried for it. I don't blame you. None of us do. The trial by survival was the only physical one of us, and if not one of us did it, the masses would have believed that we have gone easy on the little whelp."
Cynthia snorted in disdain.
"To hell what the other dragons would have thought. He already completed 3 trials. He could have stopped and stayed with what he had. 1 in every 100,000 dragons who have taken the test succeeded all the trials. For those who try to be consorts or those who wanted to be elders, or advisors, or even guardians."
Elianza looked at her lover before lowering her head to the floor.
"He was strong,"
she half mumbled with the earth beneath her jaw.
"I could see it in his eyes. He was strong. I allowed myself to push him mentally because of it. I believe that he could have endured it."
She snorted a soft gust of smoke from her nostrils.
"And, well, I made him suffer for it."
The larger dragoness leaned her head to the smaller mates and brushed her head against her. A low growl rippled through her throat, feeling her mate's comforting embrace. Cynthia continued to brush against her, making sure her mate understood her love and care for her. Feeling the mood brighten, she pulled away and looked into her eyes.
"What we did, both of us, all of us, was to see if he was worthy of being the new Dragon Lord's consort. He has passed the trials and now he faces his final one that we must all help him now."
The black dragoness nodded and leaned in, giving a small flicker of flame to brush over her loving mate. Cynthia hummed before returning to her smaller mate.
"My love for you, I hope you know it's eternal,"
she whispered lovingly to her.
"As is mine,"
Elianza said before once more brushing her head against hers. The two continued to enjoy their moment, brushing against one another. The love practically poured from them, and it was at the point where Elianza slowly rose from her pool that she gave her mate another brush.
I'm quite eased right now,"
she purred. Her eyes were half-lidded and her growl was low but hungry.
"But I still wish to be taken care of properly, if you wouldn't mind."
She exited the magma pit, shaking off the excess that lingered before turning to her mate to give a small shake of her tail. The scarlet dragoness growled loudly and her own eyes instantly flashed with lust.
"Well, I certainly wouldn't mind, my beloved."
Just as she was about to follow her to the resting chambers, a low growl was heard outside of their cave. Both stopped and looked at each other before looking towards their cave entrance. The growling continued with the sound of footsteps entering in the cave.
"Who dares enter our cave without permission?"
half-growled and half-roared Cynthia. There was no response other than more growling, though the growl wasn't threatening, but more feral. The growling grew louder and louder as the intruder approached, but then whispering was heard next, causing the two to look at one another in confusion. Cautiously, Cynthia made her way to the cave entrance, followed by her smaller mate. Turning around the corner, they saw the intruder was a dragon, but it wasn't the one that they expected. Elianza gasped, along with her mate, seeing the young purple dragon, Spike, entering their cave. Though he was growling, he was whimpering, as in if he was in pain or confusion.
"Spike?"
she called out. The young drake had reverted back to his normal size, and he was swirling his head, twisting and turning, his body half limped and he dragged. He seemed unfocused, uncoordinated with his body. He kept stumbling around in his whimpering. It was starting to sound like a hatchling asking for its mother.
Spike?"
She tried again. This time there was a reaction and his head snapped towards the sound. Incoherent responses were given and he made his way towards them, lamely and with a difficult direction. Cynthia remained in front of her mate, still playing cautiously towards the young Drake. She knew that he wasn't really any threat, but she also knew that her mate still felt an emotional attachment to him after all the trials. His rapid growth didn't really help ease her fears on him.
Where have you been, young one? Your consort has been looking for you. We all have.
Then another question came up.
How did you even find us?
Spike didn't respond properly, more mumbling or half-coherent words forming as he approached. He kept tripping or stumbling over himself as if it was too difficult to control his own ligaments, though it was until that he approached that both Dragonesses saw that Spike had been causing self-inflicted wounds. His body carried damaged scales all around him, part of his muzzle carried signs of dried blood, and some of his claws looked cracked or even broken off. Large bruising was seen all over his head where he continued to bang his head against the balled fists or the wall. The sight of the broken dragon made Elience's heart break. She made her way past her mate and quickly towards the Drake. Bringing her large claw, she scooped up the dragon into her paws, bringing him up towards eye level.
Spike, what happened to you? Can I do anything to help?
She was on the brink of tears, and Cynthia could see her mate was in turmoil, their passion long gone and her face carried worry, her eyes almost seeing that she was starting to go back to blaming herself for his current condition. The young Drake's eyes slowly began to focus, and he stared at the beautiful violet eyes that were before him. Mother, he tried to croak out. Elianza blinked, unsure if she heard him.
I'm sorry, what? Mother? Are you Mother?
She blinked once, feeling tears run down her face. From her vantage, she looked towards her mate, whom seemed just as stunned by his words.
Is he asking if you're his mother?
She asked. Elianza wasn't really sure, for the Drake still seemed out of it. He said that to her during the trial, but why? Without waiting, she turned to her mate.
Go, quickly retrieve Ember. Tell him that we found him. Go, quickly!
The Scarlet Dragoness hesitated, not sure if she felt right leaving her mate, but she heard the urgency in her words, and with a quick nod, she took off in the cave exit where she quickly went to find Ember. As she left, Elianza cooed to the Drake, trying to ease him down.
Easy there, Spike, easy. You're confused and you're hurt. Please, tell me, where were you? We've been looking all over for...
She swallowed a bit of saliva before asking.
Never mind. So, why do you keep saying mother? Is that who you saw in your memories? Your birth mother?
Too much, he said quickly.
Too much.
His eyes were filled with absent irises, and it looked like that he might pass out soon. It was then until she realized, fearfully and in distraught, that because he had separated from Ember and the scepter, the backlash caused him to take most of the energy. It wasn't really supposed to be like this, but from what Torch had told her, and the others as well, was that he touched the scepter first and then gave it to Ember. He had his own energy within him, but with Ember it balanced it out. Without her, he was succumbing to it.
Too much pain. Mother gone, left.
He groaned, finally falling upon her palm. Her eyes went wide at that.
No, please. Please, Spike, you need to stay awake just a bit longer. Please. Stay awake until Ember gets here, please.
He still twisted and turned in her claws, but didn't say anything. That was when that she heard the arrival of several dragons at once. First came her beloved, then Lord Ember, followed by 2 dragonesses. Both she assumed were her new horde, and lastly was Torch.
Wait, Spike?
Yelled Ember. Immediately, Elianza lowered him to the floor where Ember flew and practically half-crashed towards him. She had the scepter and claw ready, and quickly approaching her consort, she dropped to her knees and held him.
Spike, I'm here!
Spike heard her voice, managing to focus long enough to look at her.
Ember?
She had him held close to her against her breast, holding his head. A small river of tears ran down her face, holding her mate.
Hold the scepter! Please, hold the scepter!
She begged.
We can still save you.
Spike's body began shutting down, and his eyes began to close on him.
No.
She began screaming, trying to shake him. She brought him close and placed the scepter on his body, hoping the transfer would work. But nothing happened. She shook the scepter, trying to make anything happen.
Please!
She reached for his hand to wrap around it, but Nothing happened as well. Spike fell limp and his eyes began to close, his tired remaining breath letting loose his final words, and a tear ran down his face.
She left me. Why? Why did she leave?
Then, he was quiet. A soft exhale left him, then an inhale, followed by another exhale. She saw his chest slowly rising and falling, eerily gently before continuing on. She blinked tears away from more to come. She was unsure of what was happening before looking up at the dragons that surrounded her. Elienza was also in tears as her mate tried to comfort her. Amethyst, despite not knowing Spike well enough, she shed tears of her own. Meanwhile, the youngest seemed almost guilty, not sure how to comfort anyone. It was Torch that seemed less to be affected, but still felt for the Drake.
Well, it seems, he began with a solemn voice, that the energy was too much for him and he fell into a deep sleep. A coma, if you will.
He paused, licking his giant maw before approaching his daughter and her mate and lowering his giant head to near them.
We should consider that him sleeping was the better alternative to the energy that he has in his body.
Ember blinked away some tears, looking up at her father. Her heart was in turmoil, but she wasn't sure if this was the best outcome.
But, I don't understand, Father!
Torch looked up upon his daughter, as if she was a hatchling once more, standing in the face of the world and wondering why it was the way it was. Her mind was shattering and her heart, it was in pain, but she was still trying to understand why. Elienza was the one to respond, having finally been comforted by her mate, whom remained by her side.
Young Ember.
Ember turned towards her.
What your father is saying is that Spike lives, but he's only asleep. All the excess energy from the backlash of the trials and the scepter, it's overwhelmed his body. It was way too much for him. The fact that he's only asleep is because of it being a miracle unto itself. No dragon in the history has survived something like this. But Spike isn't just like any other dragon,
she said softly, gently stroking his snout with her claw. His breathing was so soft and so quiet it truly continued to haunt her to still think that he was not dead.
He was a dragon, raised by ponies and loved them. He cared for them, and he was the greatest friend that anyone could ever have.
Amethyst and Smolder were by her side now, standing next to their horde mate. Amethyst had gotten onto her knees and held Ember in an embrace, while Smolder offered a comforting paw on her shoulder.
So, how long will he stay like this?
She asked out loud, and to no one in particular.
It could be until tomorrow, answered Torch. Or it could be a millennium from now. As we said, this has never ever happened before, and we know nothing of it.
She held back a sob and continued to gently stroke his face.
I have to tell Twilight about this.
She looked up at her father and the others.
I have to let the princesses of Equestria know about this.
The older dragons looked at one another, not sure if this was the best course of action. The blame could be placed on them, and it could cause international turmoil and maybe even war. Despite the dragons being numerous and large, the Equestrians have faced strong foes, including ones that have nearly brought apocalyptic events nation or worldwide. In truth, it was something none of them wanted to test.
If you do tell them, Lord Ember,
began Cynthia,
I suggest you do so with the intent of not causing international incidents. We need the Equestrians to remain absent or without most of the knowledge of dragon ways. Some secrets may need to be withheld.
I agree, entered Torch. While we can't tell them about the events of the trials that had left him in this sleep, we cannot fully tell the princesses of how all our customs are done. To us dragons, it seems normal and a day-to-day life. However, they may see it as a great opportunity to deal with us in other ways.
Ember looked up to them, still rather confused.
What do we not tell them? How do we not tell them? They need to know what happened to Spike. Look, I made a promise to Princess Twilight that I would protect him and care for him.
She then dropped her head.
And I failed.
You did not fail, Ember, Torch said, with much emphasis. You put him on the trials, and this is the result of it. What happened here could be explained that the tasks performed here are something that every dragon whom becomes a Dragon Lord's consort must take. What kind they are, what the performances are, they must be withheld. The threat is not the trials themselves to equestrians, it's how it could expose weaknesses to dragonkind. It will expose where we're most susceptible to harm or mental manipulation. How they could resist our fire breaths or use our bodies for armor and weapons. We cannot and will not allow our secrets to be exposed to them.
Ember saw the logic of her father's words, nor did she really deny what harm would be caused if she did tell the princesses the type of trials that were done. With a reluctant nod, she answered,
I won't speak of the trials, but I think the sooner that they know of his current situation, it's the better.
There was no way the Elder Dragons were going to talk her out of it, so they all agreed. She then looked down at him and embraced his head.
What am I gonna do with you?
Eliensa watched the younger dragoness hold her mate, and something clicked inside of her.
Are you Mother?
He asked. Despite his mind deranged or unfocused, he saw her and asked if she was Mother. Did he ask if she was his, or if she was a mother? She wasn't really sure, but she knew that maybe, for that moment, he needed one. Her trial made him regress to a memory of his mother, and that caused him turmoil. Perhaps when he was an egg, something happened to his mother, maybe? Dragons could retain some memories in their eggs, soft imprints, voices, and vague connections. They can be remembered. Still, he was without a true mother. His memories were to go by, as that their goddesses in flesh form had raised him, but raised him as a pony, not really a dragon. He needed to be nurtured and raised by dragons. She just hoped that he would allow it, and her.
Lord Ember.
She spoke softly. Ember looked up at her.
Yeah?
She hesitated with her words, but spoke carefully and with tread. It was, after all, that she gave Spike the final push that may have caused him to go over the edge.
I wish that that Spike may be placed under my care.
She paused.
Until he awakens.
Every dragon in the room, including her mate, looked up at her in a range of emotions from confusion to apprehensive and bewilderment. Ember was the apprehensive one as she held Spike close to her.
Why do you wish to take care of Spike?
She asked, a bit of harshness in her tone. Eliensa wilted slightly at her tone, but pushed on.
Your role as a Dragon Lord will have you in and about the lands, possibly including the relationships with the equestrians. Your, horde must travel with you so that you may remain constant with your flow of energy. That would leave him unattended. I just wish to care for him until he awakes.
Ember looked up to the advisor's eyes and saw that she had a need in her eyes. That warranted Ember's caution. It was then that she realized her words were true and just. With her being the Dragon Lord, she would not have to be around the lands trying to keep an eye out of her own kind. And if she was to tell the princesses about the condition of Spike, she had to be on guard with her intentions. Whether they would act hostile or even warrant the return of Spike, it was something that she couldn't really afford to do, though somehow she had to keep Spike safe, and she couldn't do this if she would be away all the time. But if she were to do this, she would be putting his life in the safety of a dragon who may have caused this incident in the first place. So Ember, she wasn't really sure what to say.
Well, okay, what do you gain out of this? Why do this to Spike?
Eliensa looked towards her mate, and a small wordless conversation had played between them before she looked down at her.
Well, me and Cynthia, we've been working and looking for a way to have hatchlings together.
This caused Ember to blink and cocked her head as if confusion came up with the news. She hadn't heard of them seeking aids with this, nor have they mentioned before of wanting to raise young.
I think that if we could care for Spike, it would be a sort of practice run for both of us. We know that he won't be active, but we can be there for him when he wakes. We can keep him clean and alert you in any changes in his progress. You could come visit him whenever you want to, and our duties, well, they will remain unchanged.
Compared to a Dragon Lord, an advisor was sought only by the young or the intellectuals with minds wanting to seek knowledge. Advisors gave guidance or directions to those whom wanted it. However, most dragons stick to the traditional senses that were given to them when born, and only gained knowledge through their parents. Ember had visited Eliensa before to gain more knowledge than your average dragon, right before her father declared that he was stepping down from Dragon Lord. Her mate, Cynthia, was a former successor and shares the knowledge with her beloved, so they have a lot to spare. A few dragons come to them both, so in their time, it's mostly to themselves. And that is why they wanted to have hatchlings. Very few dragons go to them for advice or history, so What more to do than to try and start a family? These were two females seeking to start something, but they first wanted to try by taking care of a drake whom was asleep for Wistula knows how long. More so, Elienza felt guilty over the final trial, so perhaps she felt that this might be a personal redemption for herself. Ember felt that it could be as well. Thinking it over, she looked to her two Horde members, both giving them encouraging smiles, and even hoped that this would help settle Ember's loss. A small sigh and a nod, she looked towards the advisor.
Alright. Okay, you can take care of him.
Elienza felt relief wash over her, and her mate gave her an excited grin, giving her a loving rub against her. Ember witnessed the love between them and somehow knew that they would take care of him.
I just ask that if any changes happen, even if a scale often falls off, please, let me know. I feel as though the princesses would also like to be up to date as well.
Both dragonesses nodded.
As I said, we will keep him safe. If we are required in any way, one can stay and watch him. He will never be without a pair of eyes, nor will any harm come to him. This, I swear.
Cynthia nodded.
As do I.
It was enough, or more than enough, actually. It was difficult to find trusting dragons nowadays, and as far as she knew, it was her horde, her father, the two elders. Spike's fate was in their claws now. Feeling a bit of sickness and dread come to her heart, she swallowed and just looked at them.
Okay. Please, take care of him. I need him when he gets back.
Both larger females nodded. She then leaned down and gave Spike a gentle kindle across his face.
Please. Please, come back to me.
She whispered. She then gently laid his sleeping head across from the elders. She then stood up and turned away.
I must go now. I have a letter to write.
A pit of fear and anxiety hit her like nothing ever before. And nightfall had come, as did the fall to Ember's knees. She felt powerless and almost weak, as if she had received a bombardment of rants from Twilight and the other princesses of Equestria from Spike's instant messaging book. Pages upon pages filled with anger, grief, rage, and so on. Ember, she had yet to reply. As of now, they knew what befell Spike during the trials, his overflow of magic and his eventual perpetual sleep for who knows how long. How and what caused it was left only as dragon customs. However, the one thing that kept popping up on the letters was the clearance to arrive onto dragon territory. It was clear that they wanted to see him, check on him to figure out the situation or if they could help. Yet Ember knew that there really wasn't any hope. No help. Nothing. Equestrian magic was almost useless against dragon scales. It's why they didn't fight Garble when they had been revealed during the Gauntlet of Fire. She wasn't really afraid of them harming her in any way. She was more afraid of the magic that might have an effect on Spike. Even if their magic was dissimilar, it could cause fatal implications. Allowing the pages to finally settle until they allowed her to respond, she used the charcoal tip of her claw from a small hollow rock bowl and began to write. His body is full of unstable scepter magic from the backlash. Any magic he comes in contact with could prove to be fatal. Taking him outside or moving him around could prove to be the same result. Remember, most magic does not work on us. I'm sorry. She paused, waiting for a response, and after a minute, she continued on. His condition is stable for now. He breathes, he is still alive, but he is asleep. She paused. Once the charcoal faded from the pages, a response was almost immediate. How long will he sleep? A breath left her, and she was left slumped in the middle of her home. Tears ran down her face and it landed upon the paper, instantly dissolving. A second later, more words appeared. Ember, how long will he be asleep for? Shakily, she dipped her claw in charcoal once more and wrote, I don't know. The last words went away off of a line as they disappeared. She slumped, landing on her hind legs with her tail laid out before her. Her mind, it was just a mess, her heartbeat against her with a throbbing pain, and her emotions were in a disarray. She began to silently weep. Her father had a sub-rule for her. Her horde was out eating as of right now, and she never felt more alone.
Mother, I wish you were here. I really, really wish that you were here. I need you. I need you more than ever. I'm just so lost. Everything hurts. My heart hurts, and I don't know what to do.
She whimpered out lamely into the cave.
I miss you.
In a distant, hollowed-out mountain, far at the edge of dragon territory, a single eyelid opened, revealing a sapphire eye.
Ember?